This story unfolded in the charming city of Florence, Italy, where the wealthy businessman Enrico Duca resided. Known for his vast fortune and influence, Enrico was also famous for his strict temperament and traditional outlook on life. He had one son, Leonardo Duca, a 25-year-old who had received the finest education and been surrounded by all the luxuries money could buy. Despite this, Leonardo was different from his father. While Enrico prized wealth and status, Leonardo possessed a kind heart and a free spirit. He found joy in art and music and was deeply curious about the lives of ordinary people, especially those living on the streets of Florence. Although loved by many, Leonardo's compassionate nature was not appreciated by his father, who hoped his son would follow in his footsteps in business and maintain the Duca family's prominence in Italian society. Despite their differences, Leonardo always respected his father, doing his best to please him. But Enrico's pressure mounted when he decided it was time for Leonardo to marry. To Enrico, a union with a young woman from a wealthy and influential family was the next logical step in preserving the Duca legacy. Leonardo, however, didn't believe in arranged marriages, much less marrying for convenience. He wanted to marry for love, an idea Enrico dismissed as youthful foolishness. As the tension between father and son escalated, a pivotal event altered the course of their lives. One day, while strolling through the historic streets of Florence, Leonardo encountered a young beggar named Sofia. She was a familiar face in the city, always sitting at the same corner, begging for alms. Sofia's melancholy expression hid a depth in her eyes that immediately intrigued Leonardo. He stopped to speak with her and was captivated by her intelligence, humor, and kindness despite her harsh circumstances. When Enrico discovered that his son was becoming close to a beggar, he was furious. To him, this was a disgrace and a threat to the Duca family's reputation. As punishment, Enrico demanded that Leonardo marry Sofia, believing it would shake him from his romantic ideals and force him to understand the weight of family responsibility. However, Enrico was unprepared for the consequences this decision would trigger. When Leonardo was confronted by his father with the order to marry Sofia, he was in disbelief. He couldn't fathom that his own father would impose such an unjust and extreme punishment. Yet Enrico's unwavering stance made it clear that this was no suggestion, but a firm, non-negotiable demand. Leonardo faced an agonizing dilemma: obey his father and sacrifice his principles, or resist and risk losing his inheritance and everything he had known. Sofia, in turn, was bewildered and scared by the marriage proposal. She knew she didn't belong in Leonardo's world and feared the union was nothing more than a cruel joke from the wealthy. But when Leonardo visited her again, he explained his situation and asked for her trust. He promised to treat her with respect and dignity, no matter the circumstances. Though hesitant, Sofia agreed to marry him, and the couple wed in a modest ceremony, far from the grand weddings Enrico had envisioned for his son. The news of their marriage spread quickly through Florence's high society, causing a stir and sparking scandal. Enrico's friends and acquaintances began to question his sanity and the Duca family's standing in society. Yet, Enrico was certain that this mistake would soon be rectified and that Leonardo would eventually leave Sofia, learning a valuable lesson in the process. However, as time passed, something unexpected occurred. Leonardo and Sofia, bound by unconventional circumstances, began to form a genuine connection. Leonardo started to see Sofia not as the beggar his father had wanted him to despise, but as a strong, intelligent woman with a heart full of warmth. They spent more time together, and Leonardo learned that Sofia was a talented painter. Despite her life on the streets, she had never given up her passion for art. Moved by her talent, Leonardo decided to help her develop her skills, introducing her to local galleries and promoting her work among artists. Sofia's paintings soon began to attract the attention of art critics, and she quickly became a sensation in Florence. What began as a forced, loveless marriage evolved into a creative and emotional partnership that surprised everyone, including Leonardo and Sofia themselves. During this time, Sofia met Chiara, a young gallery owner who became her biggest supporter. From the very beginning, Chiara recognized Sofia's potential and worked tirelessly to promote her art. She also became a close friend, offering emotional support and helping Sofia adjust to the new world she now found herself in. Enrico had a longtime friend, Giovanni, a wealthy local businessman of questionable character. A cynical man, Giovanni viewed Leonardo's marriage to Sofia as a joke. However, as he saw Sofia's rise to prominence and witnessed Leonardo's transformation, he began to question his own values and what truly mattered in life. Meanwhile, Enrio, seeing Sofia's unexpected success and the deepening bond between her and Leonardo, found himself torn between pride and bitterness. He never anticipated that his punishment would lead to something positive, and this forced him to reflect on his own choices and principles. As time went on, the relationship between Leonardo and Sofia flourished. They built a strong partnership both in love and in art, and Sofia became a respected figure in Florence's art scene. But as with any story, an unexpected event was about to turn everything upside down. Let's play a little prank on those who only read the comments. They won't understand. I'm at pizza in the comment. Only those who read up to here will get it. Now, let's continue with the story. During a gala night in Florence, where Sofia's works were being exhibited alongside renowned artists, Enrio decided to make a surprise appearance. For months, he had avoided the couple, unwilling to admit to himself that he was beginning to admire Sofia's resilience and talent. But that night, something inside him urged him to witness his daughter-in-law's success firsthand, perhaps for the first time, without the weight of prejudice clouding his judgment. At the exhibition, one of Sofia's paintings, depicting a female figure in a desolate landscape, caught the eye of an internationally renowned art critic. He was struck by the emotional depth of the piece and asked Sofia about its inspiration. With her calm and humble demeanor, Sofia explained that the figure in the painting was inspired by her own mother, a woman who had fought against poverty and social injustice, but always held on to her dignity and hope. Enrio, who had been listening to their conversation from a distance, felt a jolt of recognition. The figure in the painting seemed eerily familiar. As he moved closer to the canvas, he froze when he recognized something in the woman's features. The figure was a portrayal of someone he had known well, someone he had lost many years ago. Enrio's hands began to tremble, and the weight of the revelation hit him like a wave. He quickly left the gallery, his mind racing, without saying a word. Leonardo and Sofia, alarmed, tried to follow him, but he was already out of sight. That night, Enrio couldn't sleep. His mind was consumed by long-buried memories. He remembered a woman he had loved in his youth, a woman with whom he had shared a brief but intense relationship. That woman, whom he had abandoned due to family pressures, was Sofia's mother. The revelation was devastating. Enrio realized that Sofia, the woman he had despised and seen as a threat to his legacy, was his own daughter. He had forced his son, Leonardo, to marry his own sister, unaware of her true identity. As Enrio grappled with this shocking truth, he knew he had to tell Leonardo and Sofia. But the pain of the discovery and the fear of the consequences paralyzed him. How could he confess this to them? How could he face the fact that he had caused so much suffering? Days passed, and Enrio decided that the only way to deal with the situation was to finally tell the truth. He called Leonardo and Sofia to his mansion for a meeting, not revealing the reason behind it. When they arrived, Enrio was visibly shaken, something Leonardo had never seen before. He asked them to sit down, and with a trembling voice, he began to recount his story, starting from his youth all the way to the moment he had abandoned the woman he now knew to be Sofia's mother. The revelation hit Leonardo and Sofia like a thunderclap. They sat in stunned silence, trying to process the enormity of the truth they had just heard. Sofia, especially, felt utterly shattered, betrayed and confused. The man she had come to love was, shockingly, her brother, and the father she had never known was the one responsible for both her suffering and her mother's pain. Enrico's revelation turned their world upside down. Both Leonardo and Sofia were left emotionally broken, unable to grasp how they could move forward from such a devastating truth. Leonardo, who had always looked up to and respected his father, was now faced with an insurmountable moral and emotional dilemma. He didn't know how to cope with the realization that his wife was actually his sister and that his father had caused so much suffering in their lives. Sofia, on the other hand, was consumed by a whirlwind of anger, bitterness, and despair. She found herself torn between the love she had begun to feel for Leonardo and the crushing horror of the truth that he was her brother. Her resentment toward Enrio deepened as she realized that he had abandoned her mother and had contributed to her difficult life. Both of them decided they needed time apart to process everything. Leonardo withdrew to the family's countryside house in Tuscany, while Sofia sought solace at Chiara's home, her trusted friend and gallery owner. During this period, both went through intense personal reflection and self-examination. At the countryside house, Leonardo shut himself off from the world. For days, he ruminated on his life, the choices he had made, and the future that now seemed in ruins. He questioned whether he could stay in Florence, knowing the truth would inevitably come to light. But amid his turmoil, he also thought of the moments of joy he had shared with Sofia, how she had brought light into his life despite the overwhelming pain. Ultimately, he realized that his love for her was real, though fraught with complications. Meanwhile, in Florence, Sofia threw herself into her art as a way of coping with the heartbreak. The paintings she created were raw and filled with deep emotion. Chiara, ever supportive, encouraged her to pour her emotions into her work. Slowly, Sofia began to recognize that despite everything that had happened, she still had control over her own life and her future. She made the decision that, no matter what the past held, from that moment on, she would choose her own path. Sofia began to rebuild her self-confidence and accept that her life didn't have to be defined by Enrico's past mistakes. She made the decision not to let the suffering of the past destroy what she and Leonardo had created together. After weeks apart, Leonardo and Sofia agreed to meet and talk. The conversation was charged with tension and emotion. Both knew their lives had been irrevocably altered, and any decision they made would carry profound consequences. Sitting together in a quiet park in Florence, they spoke openly about their pain, fears, and hopes. Sofia shared her resolve to move forward, regardless of what happened between them. She expressed her desire to continue painting and her determination to carve out a new path for herself. Leonardo, in turn, confessed that despite all the suffering, he still loved her deeply and couldn't imagine his life without her. He suggested that while a marriage between them was impossible, they could continue to support and love each other in a different way. They agreed to remain partners in life and art, acknowledging that their love for each other transcended societal conventions and the tragedies of their past. Yet there was still the matter of Enrico. They both knew he was struggling with guilt and regret. They decided to confront him together, not to punish him, but to find a way to move forward as a family, despite the painful circumstances. Returning to Florence, Leonardo and Sofia were resolved to face Enrico and resolve the situation once and for all. The tension between them was palpable as they approached the family mansion. The silence spoke volumes about the weight of the moment, but also their shared determination to find a way out of the pain that had consumed everyone. Upon arrival, they were greeted by a visibly aged Enrico. The toll of guilt and regret was evident in his wan face. He knew this conversation would be one of the hardest of his life, but he understood that it was necessary. Inside the mansion, the three of them sat in the large living room, a place filled with countless family memories. The atmosphere was thick with emotion, and for a long moment, none of them could find the right words to begin. Finally, with a voice full of sorrow, Enrico spoke. He had admitted to the depth of his regret, not only for what he had done to Sofia and Leonardo, but also for allowing pride and societal expectations to keep him from embracing true love. He confessed that, deep down, he had always known his actions were wrong, but the fear of losing respect and status had prevented him from doing what he knew was right. Leonardo, still carrying bitterness, asked his father why he had been so cruel, not just by abandoning them, but by forcing the marriage between him and Sofia. Enrico, tears streaming down his face, explained that initially it had been a form of punishment and control, but he never imagined it would lead to them falling in love. He never intended to hurt them this way. Fate had proven to be both cruel and ironic. Sofia, meanwhile, remained silent as she listened, processing the depth of her pain and confusion. At last, she felt it, the strength she needed. She stood up and, with unexpected resolve, told Enrico that, despite all the suffering, she was ready to forgive him. She understood that carrying the burden of hatred and resentment would only continue to destroy her. She wanted to move forward, free from the shadow of the past, and forgiveness was the only path to that freedom. Leonardo, moved by Sofia's courage and compassion, felt compelled to do the same. He looked at his father, who was in tears, and after a long pause, He said that he too was willing to forgive, but he added it would take time to rebuild the trust and love within the family. He knew that the road ahead would be long and painful, yet he believed with time they could find peace. Enrio, overcome with relief and still weeping, deeply thanked his two children. He promised to dedicate the rest of his life to making amends for the harm he had caused and to supporting Sofia and Leonardo in any way they needed. He understood that he could never undo the past, but he hoped somehow to help build a better future for them all. Then, Enrio embraced them, sealing a pact of redemption, love, and hope. They all knew the healing would take time, but they were determined to move forward together as a family. In the days that followed, life began to transform for Leonardo, Sofia, and Enrio. Though the pain of the past lingered, a renewed sense of hope emerged, along with a determination to create something new and better. Leonardo and Sofia chose to continue their lives together, not as husband and wife, but as life and art partners, bound by a deep and unbreakable connection. The decision to forgive Enrio gave them both an unexpected sense of relief. They realized that by letting go of anger and resentment, they had made room for healing and personal growth. Enrio, in turn, began focusing on charitable work in Florence, hoping to atone for the harm he had caused. He quietly became a benefactor for several institutions, supporting single mothers and vulnerable individuals, offering penance for his past mistakes. Meanwhile, Sofia's art flourished even further. Her work, which now reflected her pain and resilience, was hailed as masterpieces of emotional expression. Chiara, her friend and gallery owner, organized a special exhibition where Sofia's new pieces were presented to the public for the first time. The exhibition was an overwhelming success, drawing attention from critics and collectors across Italy. Leonardo, inspired by Sofia's strength, decided to return to his career as a lawyer, but with a new purpose. He specialized in social justice cases, representing those unjustly treated or neglected by society. His work brought him fulfillment, and he gained respect and admiration as a lawyer. Enrio, in an effort to restore his family's trust, decided to transfer the management of the family business to Leonardo. He recognized that for his son to truly flourish, he needed to be given the responsibility and autonomy to lead. Leonardo accepted this challenge with humility, understanding that it was an opportunity to build a new legacy, freed from the mistakes of the past. Life at the Tersani family mansion began to change. The atmosphere, once heavy with tension and rigid expectations, became one of warmth and renewal. Though no longer married, Sofia and Leonardo continued to live there, transforming it into a center for art and culture. What was once a place reserved only for the elite became accessible to everyone, especially those who had been denied such privileges. Enrio, who now lived in a separate wing of the mansion, dedicated himself to writing a book about his life, his failures, and the lessons he had learned. He hoped to leave the world with an honest account of his journey, one that showed that even the gravest mistakes could be redeemed with humility and sincere repentance. In the final moments of the story, we find Leonardo and Sofia in the mansion's garden, watching a group of young artists as they painted and created their works. They exchanged a knowing look, realizing that despite everything, they had found a new sense of purpose and a new kind of love, one that transcended the conventions and pains of the past. The legacy of the Tersani family, once defined by wealth and power, was now remembered for its contributions to art and justice. While the scars of the past would never fully disappear, they served as a constant reminder that true redemption and happiness come from the ability to forgive, love, and move forward in the face of adversity. 5 years had passed since that painful day at the Tersani mansion, and everyone's life had been profoundly transformed. Time had brought new opportunities, mended old wounds, and fortified bonds that had once been fragile. Sofia, now a celebrated artist both in Italy and internationally, traveled the world, showcasing her works. Her art, deeply personal yet universally relatable, explored themes of resilience and triumph over adversity. Her most recent exhibition in New York received widespread acclaim, firmly establishing her as one of the most influential voices in contemporary art. Leonardo, meanwhile, continued to broaden his impact as a social justice lawyer. He had founded a non-profit organization offering free legal services to those in need, and his dedication earned him awards and recognition. However, more significant than any accolades was the profound difference he was making in people's lives. The Tosani family mansion, which he now managed, had become a symbol of transformation and selfless service. In his final years, Enrio found the peace he had spent so long seeking. His memoir, *The Price of Pride*, became a bestseller not only because of its raw honesty, but because it resonated deeply with others who had grappled with the conflict between pride and love. Enrio donated all proceeds from the book to charity, continuing his journey of redemption until the very end. The story of the Tosani family became a powerful testament to how love, forgiveness, and resilience can turn even the darkest situations around. Enrio's legacy, once tied to power and oppression, was rewritten through generosity and a genuine desire to do good. Leonardo and Sofia learned that, despite the hardships and painful choices, there is always a path forward to find happiness. They proved that true worth is not measured by material wealth or status, but by the capacity to love and care for others, even at the expense of personal sacrifice. Their love, which began under such unlikely and challenging circumstances, grew into an unbreakable bond. No longer husband and wife, they became partners in life, in art, and in justice, united by their shared mission to make the world a better place. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more emotional narratives like this. Share your thoughts in the comments. We would love to hear your opinions on this journey of love, forgiveness, and overcoming adversity. Your engagement means a lot to us.